All right, this is my 3 by tape. There's another one down here. Do I need to do all 3? No, I don't. I do not. All right, so I've got these diagrams here. The first thing I need to do is I need to define the problem on the diagram. So if I go back to here and I click on this and I click on contents, I click on design projects, I click on this, I click on this. So I'm out of brain freeze. Hold on. Look, it's asking me yes. I'm sure it's a little early in the morning for Joe Best. All right. "190-foot span. I need to design a bridge that's 12 feet wide. I need to produce a clearance of 40 feet. The maximum height of the bridge is 100 feet. Maximum cable, 45 degrees. No structural member can be more than 20, and we're gonna use 1x1s. So what we're looking to do is we're going to set up, oops, an opening. So I'm gonna take a layer. I'm gonna call it opening. I'll give it a color. I'll give it blue. And I'll make that the current. I'll close that. So I'm gonna draw 40 feet, 30 feet, and I'm gonna group. I'm gonna group that so that way it stays together because I'm gonna move the stuff around. Now I'm gonna take, now when it comes to putting this opening, I'm gonna say we're not gonna put the opening in the center of the bridge because to put the movable part, now you say to yourself, why is it most bridges that I go over that are movable have the opening in the center? Why? Because they've got boat shipping channels and that's the deepest part of a river. But we're not gonna worry about that. We're gonna say for this project, we don't want symmetrical projects, so we're gonna put the opening to one side or the other, all right? That's a constraint that all of you are gonna have to deal with. So when you put the opening in, so I'm gonna take and copy. The closer you get it to the side, the easier it is to get this the movement mechanical units to the side versus putting them in the middle of the structure. So I'm gonna copy that. I'll plunk it in all of them. Oops, I want to go down here. I can take this out of here. I don't need to put that in here. This is your starting point. Opening in all of these to one side. Okay. One, reshape prototype. 2, accommodate opening. add, running out of juice here. Add movement to allow the 40-foot by 30-foot opening to the roadbed. Those are gonna be the two things you're gonna do. So the first thing I need to do is pump the opening in. Second thing I'm gonna need to do, I need to reshape the structure to allow this opening to work. So if I put this opening here, this bridge is in the way. If I put this is in the way. If I do this is in the way. So the first thing you need to do is accommodate the form to allow it to function. Then you actually have to add the function in order to make sure you can actually move. Now where's the roadbed? The roadbed is gonna be down at this level. Why? Because we're not gonna ramp up and ramp down. I mean, having handicap requirement, 1 on 12, you know, it's such a small rise, it's not worth it. And so now the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go reshape the prototype to accommodate the opening. I have to accommodate the opening, that's the function. So I put in here the opening. Remember, function drives a lot of the decision making in architecture. Function is the need. Like, what's function? That's the need. Client needs it. So we talk about function as like this abstract thing, but I'm like, now there's circulatory function. That's really a pattern. But when it comes to use function, it has to function. If it doesn't function, you're in trouble. As an architect, you're like, can't get the thing to function. The client won't build it. If the project doesn't meet the functional requirements, it's never gonna get built. The client's gonna say, I can't use this, it doesn't work. It's like buying a car that doesn't move. It's a beautiful car, it's not moving. All right. I'm gonna get into this one. I'll reshape this, I'll do this one, I'll do some of these. So the first thing I'm gonna do here is I'm like, how would I reshape this? Now I'm gonna take, by the way, opening layer and I'm gonna lock it. So that way I can move stuff around. And do I have a structure layer? LA. I'm gonna create a layer called structure. I'll make that red. So what you want to do is you want to have a whole bunch of layers. The more layers you can have, the easier it is to turn them on and off. Because when these projects start to get crazy, you'll be like, yeah, it's a mess. And I'm like, yeah, of course it is. Oh, how tedious. I strongly recommend drawing in layers. If you could define it with a word, make it its own layer. Like, well, that sounds like a pain in the neck. Now, the weird thing is, if you're doing construction drawings, you're gonna wind up doing that too. Structure, structure, structure. I'm gonna do one more layer. Wow, Joe Betts has gone layer crazy. Cables. Oh, boy. get joined. What? That's probably because it was mirrored. I'm not gonna worry with the cables. But eventually I put all the cables on their own layers. I'm just gonna explode all this business. Now the layers should go easier, right? Yeah. Nope, still. One more time. There we go. No, it's still doing that. No, I'm not gonna worry about it. All right. I'm gonna get and reshape him. Now, like, how do you get this, how do you take this thing and make it work? So it's an arch. You have a couple things with the arch. You still have to make sure it's thin here and it's thicker here. But the arch can take a couple different shapes. But it has to be reshaped because this is a cantilever. So this part doesn't need to be changed. This little bridge can stay where it is. I need to raise this whole thing. So I could technically have the cantilever up here and hang down and pick up this truss. Possible. This one, all these cables are going to be a giant pain in the neck. So I'm going to look at cantilevering something out to pick up cables out here. Okay. So I need to add structure here. Let's do this one first. I'm going to rotate So I'm like, okay, that could work. I'm just going to draw a line. So now, this is still wider. That's narrower. I reshape this in order to make it work. That's one. Reshaping. Right. Let's do this one. Let's get into something that's a little funkier. I'm going to create a layer called New Member. And I'll make that one, I'll do yellow. I'll do yellow. Doesn't make a difference. I'm going to turn off the snap. Oh, I need it just briefly. No, I'm going to pull that down. I'm going to draw another spline. And I'm just gonna pull this up a little bit. So now I've got thinner here, thicker here. And I would actually draw this, add in this infill. Kind of follow. The structure. So now, this would come out and this would be reshaped. So this one was rotated. This one was reshaped. All right. They both accommodate the function. If you can think of a third one, by all means you can do stuff like that. Now let's say you say, you know what, I can't think of a third one. You could take this one or this one and plunk it down here. So you may say to yourself, look at that, I'm going to copy. Okay. So reshaping these, you have to say, so how would I make it function? And then how does the thing actually conceptually work? Cantilevers, like, I can't take and break this cantilever here. This is like a tree branch. This truss hangs off of this. If I took the truss out, the bridge still stands, I just don't have a middle part. Let's do this one. So, I'm gonna take a move. I'm going to draw a line. So I'm hanging this from here. So I have reshaped. All right. That's possible. Let me say this one. I'm going to take a page out of first one.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Does it matter which order we do it in?
You want to reshape first. That, because if you don't reshape and get the opening to function, then, but that's a great question. Then adding the movement part won't make a difference. But that's a great question. So Jerry asked a super good question. Does it make a difference? The reason why I'm reshaping first, because if I can't get the opening to function, doesn't matter how I put the movement thing on, right? That's a great question. So, did that answer the question, Jerry?
Not really. talking about like the order it's set in the diagram. Like for the first bridge, you tilted it
Yeah,
the
it
first
does,
time.
doesn't make a difference. It's whatever way you think you can actually make it work. It doesn't make a difference. So this is like one way, this is a second way, this is definitely a third way, this is like a play off of this way. Now, how many possible combinations of getting this opening to work are there? There's a limited amount, right? Depending on the prototype and how it works conceptually, and then accommodating the opening. So at the end of the day, like, there's really not a whole lot of ways to do this. That's a second interesting question. There's not a linear checklist that I use, so that may help the question. Like, do I use a linear checklist? I'm like, no, I just gotta figure out how to get this thing to open. Or to get the opening that allows the thing to move. Because where is gonna be the roadway when I'm done? And I'll make the roadway doesn't make a difference. Roadway's gonna go here. It's gonna go from here to here, to here, to here. So when I'm done, it's this part right here that I'm gonna move. Pick, 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 pick. For those of you that like a nice, neat, linear process, the only one I'm gonna tell you is first, make sure it functions, and then apply the movement as an order. But all projects, if you go to design it and it doesn't function, don't develop it any further. Put the brakes on. Because there's one thing that will piss off a client more than anything. You design this beautiful house and you're like, is there a family room? I'm like, nah, I took that out. I don't think, yeah, but we wanted a family room. You didn't really need one. Well, it's not functioning the way we want. All right, you're fired. I remember my cousin, I did a project for her in Smithtown, house addition, and I said, I did the design. I'm like, you have to wait till May because I'm working. I got teaching load, a bunch of other stuff. Either that, I could put it through the firm, and the firm will charge you twice as much money. So she says, we can't wait. Do you have a name of an architect? I know, just call around. I mean, I said, I can do it for this much. She calls around, she gets a price that's 2.5 times more than I'm charging. Then the architect informs her she doesn't have feng shui and doesn't like her design, and I already designed it. And then she had to fire him, and she was into the architect for like half the fee. And I'm like, this is a nightmare. Why? And she goes back and says, I'll wait. I'm like, of course you will. I mean, what he was doing wasn't functioning. I remember when I was an associate, first architecture firm I worked for after working for a structural engineer for 6 years, and graduating from Rensselaer as an undergraduate between Rensselaer and Columbia grad school. Seams and Bletch Architects. Neil Bletch, no offense, but he was a partner. Every single one of his residential projects was a redesign, and a redesign, and a redesign. And finally the senior partner, Lester Seams, fired him. I mean, broke up the firm. And I had a choice between going with Lester and going with Neil, and Lester says, you can be associates. I'll give you all his projects and you can clean them all up. Within like 2 weeks, I had all of his clients happy and moving. And you know what the moral of the story is? I listened to exactly what the client wanted, and I made sure it functioned. If you don't do that, it's the kiss of death. Now, you say to yourself, why don't architects do that? I don't know. Is there some sort of static disconnect between, if an owner's paying you to make sure it functions, you had better make sure it functions. Now you may say, oh, he sounds like a lecturer again, but I'm telling you, it's the only thing that's the kiss of death. If you don't make it function, it's not gonna work. Those are the types of function. But I know, lecturing, Joe Betts is lecturing. Let's do this one. So I got these cables in the way. Now if this is a bridge and you get a ship going through, it's gonna be like sliced cheese. Just slice it all up. So you're like, let's take this. Bring that to here. Do I have a cable layer? I do. Oh, I'm so lucky. All right, I know what you're thinking. Hasta la vista, baby. I'm gonna relocate this one here. So I got the bridge. That works. I now drew a cantilever off of this to go back to this. Now you may say, well, if you really want to do a cantilever, you should really beef this up. And I'm like, well, I could do that. You may not even need these cables here, or you could just abandon all this and just still have the cables doing this and have that doing that. You may say to yourself, I think it would be a little better if I had some support in here. Stiffen that up. All right, so you can do that too. I now have the opening though, right? That's what I'm looking for. So you may say to yourself, well, maybe I'll just use this. Solution. I'm gonna undo that for a sec. So I'm gonna get rid of this. That's I just want to copy just this side. I'll just rely on the cables there. All right, so now it's a different solution. All right, so you're mixing it up, right? This one. When you do this, you want to come up with a couple solutions. They're like, oh, try this, try this, try this, try this. They're all slightly different. I mean, we're not going to analyze which one's better than or more efficient. Like if I was an engineer, I'd be like, oh, this is all about efficiency. I'm an architect. We're talking about how does function impact a form in order to transform it to come up with something new. That's the goal of this project. If it was an efficiency project, this would be an engineering class and we wouldn't care what the hell the thing looks like. That's the problem with engineers is they just want to design the most efficient thing. And then you may say, if that's the case, yeah, but not all architecture actually works that way. I mean, why would they design the New World Trade Center site the way it looks? Or why would a high-end person, you know, residents out in the Hamptons why don't they just do a box with a sign, house, door, lots of glass windows looking out? No, they don't do that. There's a reason why people want architecture to be expressive of a whole host of psychological, social, economic, even political overtones, because they want it to express them. It's a reflection of who they are. All right. Why do they design different styles? You know, why don't we just don't have a style? You know, adding all an ornament becomes an expensive thing in architecture. Just get rid of all of it. But instead, we have it. We have it for a reason. They're signs and symbols. They convey meaning to people that look at the building. You may say, sounds a little wow, 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 wow. But that's it. When you get into architecture and you get further into it, you're like, that's really why they have all these styles. So I don't really care. I'm just trying to struggle through Joe Betz's class. Right, everyone got this far? Take a good hard picture of that. You take a picture of it. So now I've reshaped the bridge. Now I gotta put this thing on. I'm gonna group. First I wanna see if this is grouped. I'm gonna group. So the benefit here is once you group it, you wanna show, I don't even know who that was. You want to show how this actually works when you apply it to here. Because what do we want to move? We want to move this part of the bridge. So like, I'm going to copy this. You need to show several movements to see how it works. So I'm going to plunk this over here. I'm going to scale it down a little bit. Whoops. So I'm like, all right, now if I had to move my bridge, I'm gonna put this here for argument's sake. We can eventually cut this off, that's not that important. I'm now gonna draw my bridge attached to this thing. This now becomes the structure that's gonna hold the roadbed that I'm gonna lift out of the way. I'm gonna group that. This distance here becomes this distance here. So I'm gonna take this line, measure it, roughly 24 feet 6. I'm gonna copy this, plunk it at the end of that, and I'm gonna rotate it up to here. So this that's M1. I'll make this one M2. So now, oops, this I want to leave. So if this becomes the roadbed and I push this down, this thing goes up, and the roadbed is sitting here, it clears the opening, which is that. That makes sense to everyone? So then I have to design some structure out here. To hold this. That sits there. I have to make sure this all works. So when I'm done, I now have a movable bridge. Now I could have put this way. I could have rotated it all sorts. I could have put it there's so many different ways you could put this, right? It doesn't make a difference. That was one. So now I took that thing that moves, and I said, the bridge down here, this roadbed, is gonna be part of this crazy truss, and I'm gonna lift it up to here. As long as it clears that box, I'm fine. So I went from here to here. Does that make sense to everyone? A little bit, sort of, could be. But this is what you're gonna do for each one. You're like, how would I get this to work? Like this idea generation gets to be, not, here's the thing, they're just rough conceptual combinations. I could have put this on 3 or 4 or 5 different ways and come up with 3 or 4 or 5 different solutions. So if I wanted to, I could generate within each one of these boxes, the 9x9, and I call them solution space. Within each solution space, I could have 4 different solutions. So 9 times 4, 36, right? I could come up with 36 different possible combinations of things as an idea. So when you're done, you need to have a way to generate ideas. Right now you don't. You're like, most of you will go with the first idea that pops into your mind. I'm like, you haven't explored enough ideas. That's why at the end of the day, this really becomes key. All right. How do you generate ideas? This conceptual combination. Now, the great architects throughout history, I mean, if you come into my history class and say, where'd that come from? Well, that's a confluence of this and this that brought together to make this. Almost, I'm gonna say all throughout history, almost all of the innovations and all the new styles and all the rest of the stuff all comes from conceptual combinations. I haven't really come across something that was like, it's completely bonkers new with not related to anything. It's all these concepts that combine in order to make something new. I know, you're like talking too much again. You just want to get right to the chase. Chewing up my video. And I was like, I'm gonna have this longest video in the world. Let's do this one. It's possible that if I pull this out, or push this in, I should say, this whole thing lifts. What's the matter? You look like you're in pain. You're like, oh, I'm in pain. This is just too painful. Whatever. Like, I wish you wouldn't pay attention to what I'm doing. And I'm like, well. All right. This one's a lot easier. I'm gonna draw a circle. I'm gonna copy. I'm gonna rotate. I can draw a line from here to here, it doesn't make a difference. Out here, I'm gonna wind up doing some structure. Eventually to hold all this business up. This one, click on M2. This one, I could change this one to M3, make it cleaner. So I'm like, wow. So I took this piece, which has the roadbed on it, and I raised it up to here based on the movement of this. Like, that's kind of weird, right? It works, possibly. Let's do another one. I'll copy this. I'm going to rotate this. See how big I can get this hole. See, it gets to be too tall if I try to lift it. Like if I was to lift this up, I think this would get to be too tall up top. It really wouldn't work. Slide that out of the way. I'm going to take a distance from here to here, 17 feet. I almost have to double it. I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to group. I'm going to copy. I need to make this thing a little bigger, right? Now, this is going to be a problem because look at all the structure up here. But I'm trying to think about how would I slide this back out of the way in order to make this thing work. Now, these arms don't need to be that big. I can make this small. I'm like, how do I tighten this up? I can go back and conceptually keep the concept, but try to do this in a much more compressed way and still have this slide. But this now becomes a possibility. So I'm constantly looking at these various ways of conceptually making them work. So that's the first thing that we're gonna wind up doing. So for Monday, you're gonna come up with a solution. You're gonna have your diagram, your 3D object, typically you should have your image, but I'm good with this. Go with the third one. Each one you're gonna go through, accommodate, reshape to the function, and then you're gonna wind up putting the movement in each one of them, right? Very good. Then, Monday, we're gonna pop these in 3D and we're gonna design them. I'm gonna give you a preview of how you're gonna take this and make it into 3D. You folks are good with that, right? Do you need to record this? You could probably stop now, but if you wanna record it, I'm gonna do the same thing on Monday.